Secretary Clinton should just be transparent about this. If you give out the wrong, just give out the information for crying out loud. Don't do the drip thing. This is, look, all I can tell you is how I've done. I released 33 years of tax returns. Not the most fun thing in the world to do. As governor, I had emails. You can go online at like jebemail.com or something like that. You can go check my emails. It's a matter of public record. I'm writing a book, an e-book about my emails. Because I used emails to serve people. And I think just being clear and transparent, the Justice Department now has this information, they'll make the determination, but she should just come clean. And there's another element, put aside I'm not a lawyer either, so I don't know what the criminal justice elements of this are. This was against the Obama administration's procedures as well. I mean, there's an issue there as well. Yes, ma'am. That was sacred.
All of the students that came with me, have you guys raised your hand? And we just want you, because I like you. I think if I were Republican, I would vote for you.
Oh!
But let me tell you, I want you to support immigrants with the immigration reform, without a citizenship.
I'll tell you what.
The whole package. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you didn't lose your mind. Here's what I'm for. What I'm for is a path to legalized status. I respect you. That's fine. My belief is that what we need to do is secure the border, first and foremost. We need to make sure that coming here illegally is easier than coming here illegally. That means securing the border means dealing with the 40% of people that are here undocumented, coming with a legal visa and just overstaying their time. There are things that we need to do to create certainty that the government is fulfilling the rule of law. Secondly, I do think that we need to create a path to earn legal status, which means you get a provisional work permit, you come out from the shadows, you pay a fine, you work, you pay taxes, which people normally do. And over an extended period of time, you learn English, you don't receive federal government assistance, over an extended period of time, you earn legal status. You don't receive a path to citizenship cutting in line with people that have been patiently waiting. To children that have come here through no fault of their own. Their parents came illegally and their children came with them. I do think that there has to be a different treatment. I do believe that DREAM Act is to have a path to citizenship that is earned. And that has been my position for a long while. It's the position I have on the election.
My wife followed the rules and immigrated based upon the laws and the rules, and believe me, we waited in line a long time.
I bet you did.
But we've heard from the horse's mouth for other candidates what they're going to do on day one. Could you tell us what your day one is going to be?
Day one? Well, the first part of it is that when I wake up with this awesome responsibility, I'm going to pray to my Creator and thank God for I think there'll be a strategy to deal with through, as every president does, immediately send a signal of seriousness about, in my case, the two things that trouble me the most and the opportunities that are biggest relate to the barriers for economic growth for people to get greater income in their families. And so I think there's the chance to undo any of the executive orders that the president has done that stifle economic activity. You can undo it if the rules haven't been completed. So depending on how far along these rules are, I've pledged to undo that. Secondly, I think you got to get on the phone and start talking to people around the world to say, we got your back. First problem. that would be, you start with the neighborhood, you start with Mexico and Canada, because we've lost our connectivity with our neighbors, and that creates problems. Secondly would be Israel, and a whole bunch of other countries. But we need to get back in the game and make sure that our friends know that we're serious about our security interests that also are important for our friends and neighbors. Those would be the two first things. And I might actually call it Democratic too. You know, this idea that somehow we have to have two armed camps. Here in Las Vegas, you have nonpartisan races, so you may not have the armed camp deal, right? I mean, you work together, find common ground. You don't necessarily ascribe bad motives. You actually live with one another. It's a little bit different. Maybe we should restore some of that in Washington, D.C.
I'm an immigrant in the Philippines. When I came here with my parents, my sister had already turned 18, so we had to petition her as an adult, another 8 years for myself to be reunited with my sister. Now, we talk about immigration reform, we talk about either two camps, either the ones that want to secure the border or the dreamers. The ones that people have forgotten about are people like myself. There are hundreds, if not millions of families that have been waiting on family members that they have petitions for legally.
Yep.
That have, quite frankly, have waited since your dad was president to come here. When are they going to get their due justice?
ICE is broken. The legal system is broken. It takes way too long. I don't think necessarily, by the way, that, and you might disagree with this, but I think family reunification is a value that Americans have. It's been a core of our immigration system. But we have a definition of family that is unique in the world. Not many people know this. We have spouse and minor children, which has been the definition of family in our country, and certainly the definition in terms of immigration for us and for every country. But we also have minor adult siblings and adult parents. And we have chain migration because of this. So in the Philippines, which is a great example, you have 100-year waits because of this expansive definition of family. Canada has more economic immigrants than the United States does, a country 1/10 our size. So part of the plan that I believe in is that we would narrow family petition to make sure that we expedite spouse and minor children. But then we create an economic strategy for the country by picking people that can make an immediate contribution. And that would be in the norm of what immigration flows look like for the rest of the world, and I think it would be the best way to go for our own country as well. Just pick up. I just answered the question. My plan would be to narrow it to spouse and minor children. But it does, yeah, except if they're already in line, then they would be able to stay in line. Yeah. Now, it's not 100 years now. Well, then it's not going to happen. Yeah.
As a former Floridian who voted for you when I lived in Florida, congratulations on your job that you did there, and welcome to Nevada.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My question is, with an $18 trillion debt that we have in the U.S. today, what are your plans to reduce it?
So, $18 trillion of debt exists because we have a chronic deficit problem. It's not a cyclical problem. Cyclical would mean if the economy grows, it would, it shrinks a little bit, but then when we have a downturn, it grows even more. And every time we have a downturn, the new baseline gets bigger and bigger. And it's because of two things. We're not growing our economy at a rate that generates revenue for government. The notion that every time we have a new idea, that we have to raise taxes, the net result is we stifle economic activity and revenue doesn't grow at the projected rate at all. Maybe we should try a different approach, which is high sustained economic growth generating revenue. In fact, this debate about 4% growth versus 2% growth, it sounds kind of like an economics deal, but the 2% growth differential, if you compounded that out on an $18 trillion economy, creates a Germany of additional economic activity in the 10th year. I mean, I promise you that state, local, and federal government would get far more revenue by focusing on higher growth. than by no growth. The demands on government would subside if you're growing, because people would be less dependent on government. People don't want to be dependent upon government. They want a chance to be able to rise up. And so that's the first step, is to grow the economy. Second, you gotta be focused on making sure government delivers its services, and the objective always ought to be higher services, lower price, lower cost. States do this. Why is the federal government exempt from all the things that local governments do it all the time? You have to be innovative. We have a mid-20th century government on top of a dynamic 21st century world. And so challenging that. I mean, think about it, $800 million for a website, for healthcare.gov. You can't make that up. I mean, you really would have to work hard to spend that kind of money. And so my personal belief is that reforming and restricting government. I think, for example, the government workforce could, by attrition alone, and a 3-to-1 rule, so every 3 jobs that you retire, you're able to hire one, that you could reduce the government workforce by 10% in 5 years, easily. So those things would be the second thing. And then third, we have to come to grips with preserving and protecting our entitlement systems for those that have already gotten it, but reforming it to protect it, to make sure it exists for those that haven't. Because here's the deal, Medicare has a contingent liability of $29 trillion. $29 trillion, net present value of the cost exceeding the revenues that are anticipated. Medicaid has a similar kind of number, slightly less. Social Security, by 2032 now, according to the estimates of the government, will be bankrupt. And when it's bankrupt, there'll be a 20 to 25% reduction in the payments that Social Security beneficiaries receive. So to protect and preserve it for people that have already gotten it, I think is the right thing to do. But reforming our entitlement system to make sure that people have it 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now requires reforming all 3 of those large programs. And if you do those 3 things, you'll begin to see the economy grow and debt begin to recede. Yes, sir.
My question is this. The black business sector has continued to suffer as it relates to growth compared to other groups for the last 20 years. The major impediment that black business face in this country is access to capital. Although we have the Small Business Administration and also the Treasury, the former Treasury, the main issue with the Small Business Administration is that there are no black firms licensed by the Small Business Administration to make laws under the 504 program. As a matter of fact, there's only one in the country.
Why is that?
Pardon me?
Why is that? That's
what I'm about to ask you. to address them. And then also the Small Business Investment Company program that's administered by the Small Business Administration. There are no black SBICs. There are 376 of those in the country, 273 private board members. And so naturally, in order for us to strengthen the black business sector, in order for the business to have access to capital to create unemployment, and naturally our unemployment rate is in double digits for the last, about 15 years. What is your strategy to help do more for the black business sector in regards to not only access to capital, but also contract opportunities in the federal government?
So I can only tell you what I did as governor. I actually eliminated, as it relates to contracting, I eliminated set-asides and preferential pricing for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, small businesses, that is certified businesses. The way the system worked, it may be this way too here, I don't know, but we would have this, we had 18 people, when I got elected, 18 people that were involved in the business of certifying minority businesses, MBEs. And so if you came in, you'd have to spend a lot of time, and you have 18 people figuring out if you're a black man in business. I can tell you, I got the first part taken care of. I'm pretty sure you're black. So I just asked a simple question: why don't we turn these 18 people into a marketing arm? Why don't we use that office to actually identify opportunities identify black-owned businesses that have a skill set that they can sell, and then go market to the largest purchaser of services in the state. And we had triple-digit increases in spending for Hispanic-owned businesses, African-American businesses, and women-owned businesses. it wasn't that complicated. Once we got out of the regulatory mindset and into the marketing mindset. Capital is a different issue. It's a more difficult issue because we've created the access to capital for all small businesses has really receded. And so black-owned businesses have had a tougher time for the longest, chronically. And now it's been made even tougher because of the access to credit in general for the next generation of businesses. And I think there we need to look at reforming Dodd-Frank. We need to get more community banks engaged in direct lending into the communities where they know the lenders, they know bankers. I think the best solutions for these things is where the federal government acts in partnership with local agencies and local governments to be able to help accelerate that, rather than have a federal program delivered from the top down. So the MESBIC program, I think that's the same as what you're describing. It surprises me there's no black-owned businesses. One of the things that I use the bully pulpit. I use my office to be able to say, here's a void. Let's go identify, let's help create the opportunities for people, not in a way that was discriminatory or preferential, but just if there was a void where not everybody got to participate, tear down the barriers to make it happen. And I found working with local governments, with mayors that had a heart for this, that we were much more successful empowering them and being a partner with them, or with a community-based organization that had that responsibility at the local level.
Well, that's awesome. All right, so I want to talk about one of the biggest issues that's going on right now. One of the big things is the Black Lives Matter campaign. So a couple things. I wanted to read a couple statistics that I found. So far we've had 500 police killings this year. 49.6% were white, 28.2% were black, 14.8% were Hispanic Latino. Now, whites make up 62.6% of the U.S. population, while blacks make up 13.2%. So we're over double as far as blacks being killed by police. And then there were some other numbers as far as the unarmed people that were killed by police. So you haven't talked about that at all since...
I mean, here tonight?
Here tonight.
Yeah, so I've talked about it before.
So I wanted to ask you about racial injustice, racial inequalities, institutional racism. Are you going to be talking to the different police departments about training reform? And you talk about creating a better education system, but if the kids in the neighborhoods are seeing their fathers and brothers and cousins getting killed, why would they want to go to school and excel if they're getting killed in the street? Pipeline, are you going to address that? And then for-profit persons, once again, disproportionately black and Latino numbers make up that those numbers. So
look, we have serious problems, and these problems have gotten worse in the last few years. Communities, people no longer trust the basic institutions in our society that they need to trust to create, to make things work. And so, in the places where this breaks out, first of all, I think, first and foremost, all leaders, whether they're presidents running for president, city council members, mayors, governors, everybody needs to be engaged in this to recognize that this is a serious problem. Perceptions become reality. And there is racism in America. No one should deny that. Although there's been significant progress. I'm sorry, I'll finish, but yeah, I relate to it. I'm trying to. I relate to that by saying, I relate to it by, as a president, to try to create a climate where there is civility and understanding, and to encourage mayors, leaders at the local level to engage so that there's not despair and isolation in communities. The best way to solve these problems, or the proper way that I believe Charleston solved it, rather than communities that where there was denial that there was not a serious problem. And with all due respect, a child that is educated, that believes that their chances of going to college and living a life of purpose and meaning is important. Don't tell me this. They were told they were assigned to failing schools. The teachers that were in those schools were not as good as the teachers that were in other schools. And the net result was we had these huge divides. And it was very easy to understand why that exists, why people don't think the system works for them. Education, to me, is perhaps the most important thing. People will believe that they have purpose and meaning in their lives. If they can see a path to a better life. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
I talked to the girls over there. Listen up.
They're not us, I know they were here.